New Thought Media Network proudly presents Lindsay Leimbach, Practicing Infinite Possibilities, Fridays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And now, here's Lindsay.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. It matters where you are. If you're in California, maybe you're having some coffee with me with practicing PIP and infinite possibilities. And maybe you're on the East Coast and it's lunchtime, wherever you are, or if you're even seeing this in recording, I'm glad you're here. I'm really glad you're here because as a lot of you all know, last week's didn't air. And that's what I want to talk about to you today, about motivation and technical difficulty. Who's had technical difficulty? Now, I don't know much about astrology, but I think they always say when Mercury is in retrograde, the computer doesn't work, your phone doesn't work. On that note, maybe I should make sure my sound is off on my phone, right? Things like that happen. And it happens for some reason a lot of times in waves. So it just seems like look, I'm making sure right now that I'm not going to have technical difficulty. There you go. In waves, it's like, oh my God. I called up and I got disconnected, and then I went to my printer and the printer didn't work. And then you're like, Serenity now. You're like, Mercury, what are you doing? Or is it a full moon? Or, it's all these things outside of you seem to be feeling like they're sabotaging you. And you can even think to yourself, wait, I woke up in a good mood. I set my intentions. We've talked about setting goals and setting intentions. I did my prayer. I did my gratitude journal. I'm really grateful. I'm just being this moment, and still the printer didn't work. You know? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about when things aren't going right, but you really believe in your heart that you are doing everything right, and it still just is not working out. And why I bring this up as our chapter, as our class, we're on episode 28. I can't believe that. It's because episode 28 was meant to be last week, and I was going to see my parents in Florida. And I think next week I'm going to talk a little bit about being in Florida. They live near Fort Myers Beach, and they live near Sanibel Island. And 3 months ago, Ian, the hurricane, came, right? And just level 4, devastation in that area. And lots of animals lost their lives. A lot of people lost their lives. I want you to know, lots of fish lost their lives. So I got to go back now 3 months later and see the rebirth, the phoenix rising. So I do want to visit that and tell you more about that trip, but I'll save that to next week. So this week I really want to go into that. I set up my taping of this pre-recording. I did a whole show on motivation because this has been our theme and goal setting in January 2023. And I did it right. I was really proud of myself. And I set it up and I left. And then the day before, so now I'm in Florida, the day before it's meant to air. No, not the day before, excuse me. It's meant to air at noon, obviously, because it's 12. Airs on the East Coast at 12 o'clock. So I just checked one more time just to make sure it was all good. And it was gone. It was gone. It wasn't in the system that we have. And it's a fabulous system. New Thought Media Network does a great job in aligning this up and carrying all the people that speak, tons. I don't want to say tons, but lots of wonderful speakers are always going on their YouTube channels and their Facebook. So I'm just, Friday at 9 Pacific Coast time, one time, but there's dozens of other people who speak all week long. Anyway, mine's gone. It's out of the queue. So I ended up going and checking and looking and thinking, what did I do wrong? Because where do you go when something doesn't work on the outside? The brain thinks, oh my God, what did I do? How did this happen? There must be this mistake that's going on. You go into this panic mode. And I just want to show you guys this real quick. Here we go. This is just so important for you to see. We've looked at this many times, but we have the lower brain, the middle brain, and the higher brain. And you have also the amygdala, which is connected really with the lower brain and the higher brain in survival. And when you go into panic mode, the amygdala and all the past memories and all your self-doubts and all those past tape recordings on how to react to it, which is in the middle brain, and then the lower brain of the amygdala go off, and you get this fight, flight, freeze response, this fight, flight, freeze response. You can even feel it. Like, so when I looked, I could feel my heart race. I could feel that I was getting tense, and it happens like this. It's automatic because you're a human being. This is how you're wired. You're like, oh no, there's a threat. Now, was there a real threat to me? Was I in bodily harm because I couldn't find my show? The answer is no. And I'd say 99.9% of the time, we're not in bodily harm. But we do have this incredible stress trigger that goes automatically, and it's the same stress trigger as if you're in bodily harm, as if a tiger or a bear was coming, bearing down on you, or you see a tornado coming. That's bodily harm. You could die. So that stress reaction of getting, tense and hyper focused and breathing short and feeling like you got to run away or got to scream or you got to hide. There's many reactions you can have when you have that feeling that comes, that human feeling from the body. But the problem is that we're in a social environment. And so it is not a real physiological problem going on. It's a social problem. It's something outside that's affecting me. That's not going to harm me, but my brain reacts as it's going to harm me. So when I didn't see my, course, I want to say chapter 28, episode 28 up there, that's what triggered. And why I call this practicing infinite possibilities is because you have to practice bringing yourself to your higher thinking. Remember the sign of the brain I had, up to your executive thinking, to your prefrontal thinking, and start overriding that instinct that there is something really that's going to harm you out there. You have to override that, calm yourself down. And that takes practice. That takes mindful practice. That takes awareness of what your body is feeling. So when that went on, I could actually feel, and I kind of took a step back going, okay, you've got to take some breaths. You got to go into that conscious breathing. If you practice science of mind, then you can even go into prayer. Go into affirmative prayer that everything is fine, and calm yourself down and know that the higher power can go through you even at this time, even though your amygdala has responded in such a way. That's why I love this. Let me see if I can find it. Right here it goes. The ABCs of PIP. Awareness, breath, choice. Awareness, breath, choice. So when I felt the amygdala reaction, when I felt my stress reaction kick in, I mindfully had to be aware that I felt my stress reaction kick in. And I had to be mindful without judgment, meaning saying, listen, this isn't the end of the world. Nobody's going to eat me. Nobody's going to fire me. No one is going to yell at me. It doesn't really matter for me to get this upset. What I need to do is be aware of how I feel, take that breath or do that prayer or take the walk, whatever is the quick tool, or go to gratitude, 3 things you're grateful for. I am grateful for New Thought Media Network. I am grateful that I get to reach you all in doing the show. Bring yourself back into alignment so you can go and have the prefrontal cortex activate so you can have your executive thinking, your logic thinking, the one where it has empathy and compassion and observation and creativity and all that. Get that going so you can deal with the situation in front of you. So I want to say when they say Mercury goes into retrograde, right? When Mercury goes into retrograde, then you got to do more ABCs, not less. You don't just put your hands up and go, oh God, it's just going to be a bad day. And I've had that feeling, I'll tell you, once in a while, where you're like, can you just hide under the covers? Nothing is aligning right, but you've got to pull yourself out, peek over those covers, right? Say, no, back into centering yourself. Not to be in that chronic stress reaction all day, not to give in to the lower instinct of hiding or fighting or fleeing or freezing. That's all just human nature, fight, flight, freeze response. You do not have to live in there. You can take a breath even when Mercury's in retrograde, even when things aren't going your way. Pull yourself into a calm, peaceful state and make a wise choice on how to deal with the problem. So go back to what happened for me is it didn't work. It wasn't there. And I just had to, there's just nothing I could do. I actually was teaching a class in Florida on mindfulness and how to reduce stress, worry, and anxiety. So I was laughing at myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to leave the apartment or the condo we were in right then when I realized I wasn't going to be on and go teach a class. And I was triggered that I was upset and I had to override my human nature to be frustrated and angry and get to a calm space so I could then go drive, or actually we could walk because we were at a big complex, walk over and teach a class on people exactly what I was feeling. Right? I talked to a whole big group of people. Probably the average age was about 75, 80 years old. And they just lived through Ian. So you want to talk about, they're dealing with aging and they're dealing with their body aches and their hearts, not working as well and their friends dying and things like that. So they have a lot going on. I just had a show that didn't go on. So I had to really do this practice. I'm telling you, this practice, this awareness, this shift to not give into that human nature of being angry and frustrated, and stay focused on what was important. And I did it. I calmed myself down. I took a few breaths. And then, of course, what is the magic words? Come on. You guys know what's the magic word? Let it go. That's not one magic word. Let it go. 3, let it go. My intentions were right. My actions were right. I did everything I thought possible with the tools I had to make it happen the way it needed to happen. It didn't happen. Let it go. It's, wow, what a good practice, letting it go and moving on and not taking that frustration from the morning, from seeing that, not taking that. It happens to all of us. Something doesn't happen the way we expect it to happen, and not allowing that frustration to poison the next moment. Let me say that again because it's really important you understand. Not allowing that frustration, that anger, that amygdala going off in your brain, putting all those chemicals, all those stressors into your brain, into your body, and having the ability to say that you are able to have a higher consciousness, and you can override that. I am not saying that you go into denial, because I'm not saying you suppress your feelings and your emotions. No, you become aware of them. You say, yup, this really bothered me. But it doesn't mean that you have to have that moment poison the next moment. It does mean that you have to circle back later and figure it out. You don't walk away and just say, I quit, that's it, I'm never talking to them again, I'm never doing a show again. That is not what you're going to do. You are not setting up a pattern of running away. What you're doing is setting up the practice of holding when something doesn't go right, not allowing your physiological nervous system to override your higher thinking, allowing yourself to hit that ability to go to higher consciousness. Say, I'm going to put this down now. There's nothing I can do with this right now. I'm going to put it down. Doesn't mean I'm going to ignore it or tuck it away. And then you're going to move into the next thing you need to do in the present moment. Okay, 20 years ago, I found this sign. I cannot tell you where I found the sign. And I laminated it, and it's pretty old. I'm going to show it to you in a second. And it was right about the time I was getting a divorce. And I hung this up in my office that I had in my house. Let's see if we can get you. It says, life is just a cosmic joke. Either you get it or you don't. Now, you could say that's kind of cynical, but I don't see that as cynical. That really, at the time when I was actually getting a divorce and I was going through a lot of pain, and there was a lot of times in which things were happening to me that I did not want to have happen. A lot of interactions, whatever it was. You had lawyers, and we had emails, writing up the divorce papers, all that stuff. And I needed to allow myself, this allowed myself to say, listen, don't take everything so seriously. Don't take it so seriously. Whatever is happening right in front of you is impermanent. It's going to change. And there's so many times in the past when I took something so seriously, like this is going to just end my life as I know it, and it's going to define me. And I get so upset about it. And then I realized, no. Now, don't you remember? Let's just remember. Oh gosh, I could go back to the time when my first real boyfriend broke up with me, the one I loved. I remember sitting on my bed, and I was about 18 years old, and I was crying so hard I couldn't even catch my breath, and my life was over. And my mom was sitting next to me, and she said, Lindsay, I promise it gets better. And how could it? I'm never gonna get married. I was 18 years old, and I thought, well, if it's not this guy, it's nobody, And now I look back, and that's what I think of that, and I think that life is a comic joke. Either you get or you don't. Of course, that wasn't the only guy. Of course, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was for me at that moment. But now, at 56 years old, when I get this problem that arises, I know it's impermanent. I know in some ways I'm going to laugh at it. God bless the guy I dated when I was 18, but I'm really glad we never got married. We have nothing in common now. It was a blip of time, and it seemed so important in that blip of time, but it didn't define me. So that's same with the show. The show didn't work out. Oh, gosh, that's disappointing. Yeah, it is disappointing, and I'm sorry that's the way it happened, but it doesn't define me. It doesn't define you. So let's even go back to this whole technical difficulty issues. As you age, one thing that has happened, I was in a board meeting last night. Let me see my time. I'm on a roll. I was in a board meeting. I'm on the board of the YMCA out here. And a lovely gentleman was sitting next to me, and we're going to be using something called, I think it's called Borderly. It's some kind of app that we're going to use so we can get our notes better, so we understand, because there's so many components going on with the YMCA, and we need to know all the components going on and be informed as good board members. And people who knew him better than me were like, Fred can't do it. Fred can't do it. And Fred's older, probably about 15 years older than me. He's like, yes, I can't do it. Why? Because it's technology. That's why, right? So as you get older, technology is just speeding fast in all these things that we need. It's just like you can't even keep up with the technology, how fast our phones are improving and the cars and everything. It's like, oh my gosh. So those of us who grew up with not these electronic cars that beep and park themselves, and oh my gosh, it's almost overwhelming for us who used to drive around with stick shift, just with our honking horn, right? It's so interesting. But anyway, so we have to really take a breath as we get older, knowing that technology is moving so quickly and we're not used to that. Younger people like my kids who are in their 20s, they're used to technology moving fast. So that something new has arisen, they're like, oh yeah, not a problem, blah, blah, this is what we do, mom, blah, 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 we fix it out. But we cannot absolutely shut down when we don't understand the technology of life. We cannot allow ourselves to go into a fight, flight, freeze response. We have to open up our mindful tool case and look inside and say, listen, I got this great brain. Yeah, in the middle part of the brain, that's where your programming is, all the things you've ever learned. It doesn't tell me how to drive this car. And it doesn't tell me how to work this phone. And I'm kind of pissed because I've been driving a car, you know what, for 50 years, 40 years, 30 years. I've been driving a car and I've known completely how to drive a car until now because of the technology. And now it's not registering in my middle brain. So it's not easy. Ta-da! Right? Life is just a cosmic joke. Either you get it or not. No one said life was going to be easy. Nobody. A 2-year-old or a 1-year-old is learning to walk and run. A 2-year-old is learning how to speak, right? A 6-year-old is learning how to read. A middle schooler is learning that they have a sense of self, an identity. A high schooler is learning how to stand and open up their authentic self and not cave into peer pressure and following what their parents want or following what their peers want, but to make their own higher level, because that's really when the prefrontal cortex is kicking in. The 20-year-old is learning how to take full responsibility for self and setting up their own karma, because now it's really dependent on their choices as a full adult on what they do. Life isn't easy. Life is growing. Life is magnificent. Life is wonderful. But you got to be flexible and you have to put in right effort and right thoughts and right concentration. Circle back to what the Eightfold Path from the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha. He had eight things, 8 tips. Look it up. Google Eightfold Path. Right concentration. That's meditation and learning how to become aware in your brain, what's going on, and mindfulness. Right effort. And even the Buddha said right livelihood, which means that the actions that you do to preserve yourself as a human being, an independent human being in your job and in your volunteering, it's not self-serving. It's that it's for the better of the good, right? That you're helping the better of the good, because in Buddhism, they say that we're all interconnected. And I believe in religious science. And as we even get into nature and so forth, we realize the energy of nature, the energy of universal, we are all interconnected. Okay, so now we know life is not doing things to you. Life is happening, and it's happening through your tool, your mechanism, this beautiful chapel I call Lindsay Leinbach's sacred vessel that I have been gifted, called Lindsay Leinbach. Life is flowing through it. even with technical difficulties. So things happen on the outside and then they come in, and we have to remember that we have a human brain that's part of our tool mechanism, right? To filter so we can get to our higher consciousness of our brain, connect our higher consciousness of our brain with our empathy or compassion or love or universal of our heart. But in that beautiful brain that we have, that is our tool called Lindsay Limbach for me, whatever it is for you. In that tool that you also have the amygdala, you have the middle part of the brain of all the programming you've learned from the past. And then you have the lower part of the brain that's always trying to keep you alive, to keep you alive. And so you have to work and use all of this tool and this whole body to be able to have life flow through you. And then through conscious choice, you get to put out what you want. So this episode is a lot about motivation. So it takes motivation to activate energy to be able to override the human instinct of fighting, flighting, and freezing. Fighting, flighting, and freezing. It takes effort. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if Mercury is in retrograde and your kids are doing something wild and your doctor didn't call you back and your job you don't like. It doesn't matter what's going on the outside. If you are not taking the effort to align yourself, to activate your prefrontal cortex, to bring in your higher self, then it doesn't matter. All those things are going to be defining you. All those things on the outside will define your day. You are giving your power away. You are not using your sacred vessel. This is your sacred vessel. This whole human body experience that you can say you chose or didn't choose. I don't know what your thinking is. I believe I chose incarnation as Lindsay Limbach with this tool, with all this craziness going on, whatever it is. And I get to use this tool. As imperfect as it is perfectly me to use this tool to learn and grow. And I have to motivate myself. But motivation is part of a human experience. Now, I do want to say that there is an underlying motivation to grow and learn in all things. You see it in nature all the time. And we'll circle back when I show you some pictures at Sanibel Island when I was there after Ian, 3 months. I'll throw up some pictures next week. But nature is motivated to grow. Nature is motivated to adapt. Nature is motivated to be flexible. You can see it in when a tree grows right around a rock, or when a river runs into like a mountain and then it changes course and goes around the mountain. Nature knows that it needs to adapt and put extra effort into whatever it is to find its way to express itself. We are nature. So when my show didn't air last week, that was the rock that I ran into. And if you study Taoism, which is a beautiful philosophy to study, like nature, it gets very much into it, then you change course like nature and you grow around the rock. I don't become the rock. I grow around the rock to express myself. So yes, I had a wonderful class that was for last week about motivation, and I will continue it next week. But I'm growing around the rock so I can bring this out to you all, because this is real life. This is real life. So take your breaths. Remember that, become aware. You hit the rock. Don't think, oh God, I hit the rock, it's over. You say, okay, now I'm aware that I need to calm down, align my vessel as myself, be aware of what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and then I take and breath so I can feel what I need to feel, get my vessel as Lindsay Leinbach in tune with my higher consciousness. You can do it through breath, affirmative prayer, both of them, right? And then from there, the aha choices arise. And then you make good choices and decisions. This is your power to set up your karma, your cause and effect. You have that power every single day, every single present moment. You have the power to set up your karma in a positive way. And if you don't put the effort in or the motivation in to set it up, then what you're saying is that the world will set it up. The outside world. The world is happening. It'll feel like the world is happening to you instead of through you. But we have the gift that the world happens through us. Claim it. Have a terrific week. I pulled up an affirmation for today just to see what it was, knowing what I was going to do. Today I'm learning. Today I focus on learning to grow, to be a better person. Is that awesome? That is what I picked up randomly. You know, I just went, what's the one today? Today I focus on learning to grow into a better person. Every single day I'm going to do that. And sometimes I need to just have a laugh. If you can't laugh, then you might cry. So choose to laugh. Anyway, I love being with you all. I thank you all. Remember that New Thought Media Network is a nonprofit organization. And I just want to once again really shout out and say thank you to them for all that they do. They do ask for donations to keep the network running on Facebook and YouTube. Look back on my past episodes. So if you want to see more about motivation or happiness, I have lots of them now. If you want to get in touch with me, feel free to contact me at Centeredmoment at gmail.com. You can look me up or lindsayleinbach.com. I have lots of YouTube videos. Feel free to look there. I love coaching. I love helping people get around the rock, be their higher best self, no matter what's going on. So if you need any support, feel free to reach out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just send my blessings and my love to you all. Have a wonderful week.